Previously on your favorite episode.
How you doing? No, you didn't.
Hi, everyone. I am Trevor, and welcome again to another episode of Your Favorite Episode, the show where we ask people to tell us their favorite episode of TV ever, and they come up with the first thing that comes to their mind. Today, we are talking to Jackie's best friend and adopted brother, Ryan Macdonald, about a very special episode of Community. The episode in question is Season 2, Episode 14, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. This is a favorite for many fans of Community. In fact, an episode that even Dan Harmon has referred to as one of the best episodes in the series. The episode deals with some very key moments in the story arcs of several different characters, particularly the characters of Pierce and Jeff. And if you're unfamiliar with the show, we're going to get into more of who those characters are and what those arcs are that happened in this story. But it's a touching story and one of the funniest episodes ever written. It also includes a character in blackface, and because of that, became notorious as one of the episodes to get pulled from streaming. As we discuss in the episode, its decision to be pulled wasn't caused by any sort of rancor or fan outcry, but rather as just a prudent decision by streaming networks who were at the time trimming their offerings of shows with people in blackface, which is way more common in the 21st century than you might imagine. That said, in this episode of Your Favorite Episode, we talked to Ryan, who has chosen this, about why this episode was so important to him and why it is that he wanted us to see something that we had to go out of our way to find because, again, very few streaming platforms had kept this episode on it.
TV rots your brains.
That's absurd. TV only softens the brain like a ripe banana.
Television. Much of our future depends on the way we use this medium of communication.
Welcome again to Your Favorite Episode. Today we are talking to Ryan Macdonald. Do we have
nothing in particular?
Hold on. Didn't we have an intro?
We do.
Thing?
You're going to say my best friend's adopted brother.
My best friend's adopted brother. That's what it was.
And he's also VinylDad,
Yes.
and I think Mickey has a section that's in the top of the document as well.
We are welcoming with us today Ryan Macdonald. Ryan is my best friend, Jackie, her adopted brother, and he's also super into Funko Pops, records, comic books, and board games. And he has one son who is totally awesome. Jude.
Totally awesome.
Welcome, Mr.
Thank
Ryan
you.
Macdonald. Thanks so much for being with us today. We are going to be talking about Community. Before we do that, I want to, on camera, for the record, because this is important to note right now, R.I.P. Amazing Jonathan.
Yes.
That is, very sad to lose you. Let us go up from there into one of the saddest and most hard-hitting episodes of Community. And I think an episode that a lot of us who like the show will remember fondly.
I think a lot of fans hold it up on a platform.
Yeah. And that's, we're going to get into all the reasons why, but let's not get into also the reasons why it has become infamous just yet. And let's just say we are talking about Community. So, Ryan, give me a brief encapsulation of Community itself. What is Community? What's the story to Community? And then run through, if you will, just the major characters real quick as individuals.
So, Community is, if you want, what the show is about. It is about a lawyer who's been disbarred and has to graduate college with a real degree to continue practicing law, and creates a fake study group to meet a girl, and the study group kind of becomes his family over time. Within that, the group itself is Jeff, Abed, Troy, Annie, Britta, Pierce, and Shirley. Troy's the ex-football star actual man-child.
My name is Bing Bong the Archer.
Pierce is a senior community college student who's been just going to community college because he's got nothing better to do his entire retirement, I guess.
I don't need a character.
Britta is the needlessly defiant activist.
Hey, hi! I'm Lavernica.
Shirley's would fancy yourself God's favorite child.
Hello, I am a dwarf named Zippity Doo.
Annie is consummate overachiever.
Ew, Hector the Well-Endowed?
And Jeff is none of those things.
Oh, hey, I'm Mar.
And then Abed is the actual main character of the entire series.
This is a role-playing game. It takes place entirely in our collective imagination.
Yeah.
Because everything is seen through the lens of Abed, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, Abed is I think the real camera for the show. If you haven't seen it, Abed is on the spectrum. They are very clear in this episode. He is literally referred to as the undiagnosable, but they don't ever pick a thing.
I actually really think it's because Dan himself never got diagnosed, so he didn't know what to say for Abed.
That could be. And the other thing is that they also always act as if he doesn't know, right? Right.
Abed knows.
Yeah, Abed knows. He knows that he doesn't pick up on social cues, and he can't read faces, and he has all these.
And
problems.
that's why he puts everything through the lens of television, because he understands television.
Yeah, exactly. And so everything is processed that way. But again, Abed doesn't have a diagnosis for himself. Abed is out of that as well. And Jeff, who is the lawyer, I love the description of he is none of those things. The point of Jeff, who is supposed to be the kind of, if Abed's the camera, Jeff is your blank slate.
When they have each character discuss their religions at Shirley's Christmas party, Jeff goes agnostic.
Yeah, Jeff's agnostic. He will not pick a side. He is not a thing because he doesn't want to be related to anything. He's a model of Gen X-ness in that way. It's this sort of last vestige, late Gen X type guy that is dude, if you care about anything, you're uncool. And that's kind of his whole deal is I don't want to care because caring is uncool. Let's go through the episode. Now let's do it play by play. And let's just start with the narrator. This has kind of a unique open. There's always a cold open.
Oh yes.
But this one has sort of a unique cold open.
Yeah, they set up all the backstory for the episode so that they can lead in from the opening theme with them just playing the game. Mm-hmm. But the cold open is a narration, not unlike Galadriel's from Lord of the Rings, where a female voice that we've never heard on this show before is explaining the origin of Fat Neil.
Right.
How Fat Neil left his previous school to come to Greendale to avoid people picking on him for his weight.
Yeah.
And in that moment that they determined that they set that as his reason for leaving, somebody, we don't know who, declares him as Fat Neil. So where are the bathrooms? Over there by Fat Neil. And then they cut to several shots of him being called Fat Neil and just getting a little bit more depressed looking about it every time. Fall back to Jeff, who's sitting behind him, looking like he feels bad about something. Talking to Annie. Annie, being a former head case, notices signs of him declining, and they decide to get a group together to play D&D together because that's something he loves to do, and they want to do something with him that he loves to do to make him feel better about all this crap he's been dealing with.
We get this narrator, and this is, again, like you said, it's a call to Lord of the Rings, and we're gonna get several of those. Yes. In this episode, because they do like to make their reference jokes in this. He loves working in homages, even though he also criticizes them for having homages to other things all the time within the show. But yeah, so we get this, and then we get our opening theme, which I was a little sad because I hadn't watched Community in a little bit. and I was like, oh, hey, we get to watch Community again, and that you picked an episode that didn't have the normal theme song. It had the redone theme song. It's done in sort of a, if you want to explain.
It's done in sort of a medieval dressing, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, Ludwig Göransson, who is one award away from an EGOT and did the music for the episode for the show. Yes. He recorded the opening with the Seattle Symphony Orchestra.
Did not know that.
You were right. The cold opening is emulating Lord of the Rings, and the voiceover is the wife of a post-producer, Jake Oust, and she is doing a Cate Blanchett impersonation.
That's nice. All right. That is good to know. I like the, I did not know that about the composer. I do remember thinking, and forgive me, if you do know the name of the band who wrote the theme as it is originally.
The 88.
The 88,
yeah,
right.
The 88.
And, right. And I just always think it must be really flattering when you're a band whose song gets chosen as a theme song. But not only that, when some other like composer comes in and then rearranges and reworks, and just to think like they're working with your material, I just always think that must be one of the most insanely like flattering things that can happen to your work. Okay, the story so far is everybody's meeting in the study room to have a D&D game, and it's a D&D game with Fat Neil.
It was supposed to be Jeff, Annie, Fat Neil, Britta, Abed, Shirley, and Troy, and then Chang was lurking about and joined in.
So Chang, if you've never seen the show, Chang is played by Kin Jeong, and is just a mad person. The first season, he's their angry, kind of like lazy Spanish teacher. It's sort of like
being unhinged, and then after Modern Warfare, he is completely unhinged.
He's just gone. Like after the first season, he is gone. Second season, he is just an insane person. And he is showing up. He keeps trying to get into the group. That's part of the story in the second season, is that he wants to hang out with the study group. And so he keeps showing up at random things that they do, and they keep trying to ignore him or they don't have any interest in keeping Chang around because he's insane. And and so in this, when they're planning the D&D game, he just happens to be there, and they didn't notice. And when they all put their hand in to agree to do it, he's just there. And they couldn't say anything at that point because he was already there. Mm-hmm. And so that's Chang is in this thing. But the notable exception and the thing that we are told from the beginning is going to be the conflict is that they did not invite Pierce. And Pierce, as the old guy, is always feeling left out, and at several other points in this season in particular, they've made a big point out of him feeling excluded from the group.
Yes.
And like people don't want to spend time with him, and people don't like him and whatnot.
Which
and
is a big part of the rest of his story circle as well.
That might have a little something to do with behind the scenes stories that apparently Chevy Chase, who played Pierce, did not get along with many of the cast or Harmon or other people.
Specifically Harmon.
Specifically Harmon. Yeah, and he was just a very demanding, I think would be a fair way to put it, kind of guy who often apparently did not get things that they were trying to do, and would try and insert his own things that did not work, apparently. I mean, that's sort of the side from the cast and the crew there.
He's still one of the most gifted physical comedians I've ever seen, though.
Oh, for sure.
He is incredible physically.
People who don't know, who've never watched like old SNL and seen him when like the gag was every SNL began with him falling off of something, and you can't understand how funny that can be, and yet it happened a million times. and it was always funny. It was
every
the funniest
time.
thing.
Every time.
Yeah, he'd go and he'd walk, and they'd set it up. They'd be like, "Well, we just need you to put something on this ladder here," and it'd just be telegraphed just like that, and it'd be this whole like, "Go on, go up the ladder," and it was the funniest thing.
Even though you knew it was coming, it was still funny.
It was the funniest thing. And he really is he was so good. And also at a deadpan comedy, there was a certain time when he was just a full like deadpan. I mean, obviously I'm hoping everybody here's seen Caddyshack at least once. The character of Ty and the entire like performance there, it just cemented him as this legend, mostly a bunch of crap, but like some of the funniest things that have ever happened. Ever. And then he's Pierce on there, and by then he was so convinced of his legend status that he just became something of an issue, apparently. And so the storylines sort of mirror this. The storylines are about no one getting along with Pierce. Pierce complaining that he's not getting enough in the group, as Chevy was complaining that he was being written out of the show and cut out of the show and left out of episodes. And so on, and they just turned that into his arc. And he and Jeff on the show, Pierce and Jeff, very, very contentious. Apparently, in real life, Joel McHale.
They have very few actual like bonding moments.
Yeah.
They are few, but they, where they do exist, they are right. They are pretty good.
Yeah, well, right. It's actually a major theme of the show that Jeff and Pierce in particular have this conflict. And a lot of it is based on Jeff being like, I'm not as old as you, I'm young like them. And trying to keep himself out of, being lumped in with the old guy.
Yeah.
Right. And the other, issue is just that Pierce is a thoroughly detestable person. He's a racist and he's abusive, and he's just generally
awful
to be around. But he does have his like moments of generosity and like his genuine like love for the group and so on.
And he particularly Annie. He loves Annie.
Right. So Pierce isn't there. We're at the table. We're about to play the game. We now have to immediately go to the first major elephant in the room, which is going to be, as we'd mentioned, Ken Jeong's character of Chang, who was there and is insane.
He showed up in drow face.
Drow face. What's another word for drow face here?
Dark elf.
Dark elf. Yeah. As Shirley says, literally the second we see him, are we just going to ignore this hate crime right here?
I like that.
And then
Pierce
later
calls
on,
him Al Jolson.
Pierce calls him Al Jolson.
Yes.
Al Jolson. No, I also still love the line of where he, they say, you're going to ignore this hate crime right here, and he responds, "Oh, I'm a drow elf. This is my coloring."
And the funny thing about it,
he's very matter of fact about it. Like, I'm a drow.
Right, I'm a drow. Shouldn't you be in armor?
One of the neat things about this episode is, I don't know if you realize it, but normally in episodes about Dungeons and Dragons on TV, they have to call it something else, and that's because the D&D people won't give them permission. Well, they tried to go the normal route through the lawyers, and they couldn't get permission that way. So Dan called up the Wizards of the Coast, like the people who make Dungeons and Dragons, and they gave permission because they love Community so much.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that story.
The problem that Dungeons and Dragons had with Chang's costuming in this episode was not the fact that they considered what he was in blackface. They did not like that he was LARPing and not Dungeons and Dragoning. So that was the problem that the Dungeons and Dragons people have with this episode.
I like that. I like that as a complaint. Just the like, hey, LARPing ain't our system, man. Like that's not cool. Anybody who doesn't know, LARPing is live action role playing. And I have definitely used D&D systems to LARP, but it's not exactly what you're supposed to do with that. But that wasn't most people's complaint. Yeah. So the episode has been pulled from most of the streaming platforms because of this. In fact, I had to log in to your Voodoo account to see this.
It's on Amazon Prime still. The only one that has this particular episode, season 2,
Amazon
episode
Prime.
13, is Amazon
15.
Prime. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Terrible at math.
And it's yeah. So and it's because of this. We've got Chang in blackface. The gag itself, even though it's really it's kind of a quick gag, even though he's there the whole time. But B, he's not colored like a black person in it.
Yeah, that's the I think the takeaway that people who complain about it missed is that it's not minstrel blackface. It's literal blackface. It's black makeup.
Right.
A wig.
But to be fair, not only do they make the joke right there where they say, well, shouldn't you be wearing armor? And he says, I'm an elf, not a nerd. So again, willing to get into blackface for some reason, like, and this is Chang, and Chang is notoriously weirdly racist. Like, we'll confuse his own ethnicity at a time and just say that he is any random Asian thing, and then go, they're all the same, or whatever. And also the show itself deals a lot with race. And in this, again, it's one joke. Whether or not, even the one joke should get by, I don't know that my opinion on whether or not it's offensive really matters.
Where did this is offensive come from? Where was that original complaint? I know this because I learned it because I was researching the Dan Harmon quote today. And what happened was there was an episode of 30 Rock and I think a scene in The Office that the streaming services removed. And then I guess when they were combing through their other offerings, they were like, "Oh, well, let's just get this one too."
Yeah, and that was I believe that was
it. I mean, it was quietly done.
Yeah, I don't think
so. It wasn't even that anybody called it out in particular.
Drew attention. No, and and I don't think so. And I will say that the other thing is this show did a lot intentionally, and I think that we can acknowledge this.
Oh, yeah.
And it might have done it in a very white way, but it did a lot to acknowledge or to bring diversity to TV. And I mean, like, it's kind of funny to think about, like, when it came out, that TV was still as white as it was when it came out. Like, that the idea of having this diverse an actual cast was still kind of a I mean, like, it was literally written and played for a joke. The idea of, like, can you imagine if it just became a totally diverse cast? That's where we were. And the show constantly acknowledged other points of view and made itself about that. It made itself about, exactly, inclusion and so on. And in fact, this episode is all about inclusion and is in fact a really positive story about inclusion. And so let's get back to the play-by-play then. So we get this one-off blackface joke with Ken Jeong's chain there. And then we get introduced to the game, and Abed is going to be the DM. Now, do you think in show that Abed has played D&D before?
By himself, where he was both playable characters. He was the entire party and the DM. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of the impression that I got, is like, hey, I know this thing. I know it really well. I know all the mechanics. I know what makes it great. Did you play a lot when you were in high school or anything? Or?
No, I didn't.
No.
Like I had mentioned, like I was like plenty aware of D&D, and then I played once with some work friends when I lived in Tallahassee for a little while, and that was my first time playing it. Beyond that, I've sat in and watched people at the comic shop play, and tried to get games together and never really could. And then I found other tabletop RPGs,
right,
to kind of scratch that itch. Which Jackie, you and I recorded an episode of my show
One of the things they say in this episode, at the narrator at the very beginning says something like they're settling in for a life-changing game of Dungeons and Dragons, and it made me think of we played a life-changing role-playing game.
Fiasco. I love that game.
Yes.
Oh, I know Fiasco. Is that the one where you're like very, very, very small time criminal?
Yes.
Like you're going to perform some like you're going to steal $500 from somebody.
Yeah.
I think ours was a pen.
Right. You roll dice to determine your relationship to the person next to you.
The other people.
If you have anything in your possession.
Right.
Part of the reason, and I hate to get off topic.
No.
Part of the reason that I've divulged myself and binged the Righteous Gemstones recently is that I see elements of every single bit of that game and elements of those types of stories in that show, and I love it.
Oh yeah, the pettiness in Righteous Gemstones in particular.
Absolutely.
The like meanness for nothing. Like, just for no reward at all in this, and it's just it's pretty incredible. But so familiar with D&D though, right? You know? I played D&D growing up, and I was not like, we didn't play strict. Like we had one of those games that was sort of like,
the best games are the loosest rules.
Loosest rules, yeah. It's mostly pretty much every great role-playing experience I've ever had is if you can make an entertaining enough case for why something should happen, you can get it to happen.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. There should be some dice rolls. There should be some chance and da. I mean, if you're doing combat or like making a joke, but the idea of like, you should get a bonus because you describe so well what you want to do.
That's actually a mechanic in the Fate RPG.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's like we didn't play like by the rules, but I will say, watching this episode, was aggravating as somebody who actually knows how D&D operates.
Yeah, they're very fast and loose with the gameplay.
At all. Yeah, and like within the story. Like within the story, they are fast and loose, and that part weirds me out the most because.
Are you referring specifically to the way that only Abed rolls dice, or that Pierce got ahead by metagaming?
That only Abed rolls dice. That Pierce gets ahead by metagaming. That Pierce in the beginning, for some reason, gets 4 turns, with no defense. And so, like, it was just very odd, like the number of actions that he got from the moment he appeared, and that no one else got. And I was like, no, hold on. A million other things would have to happen for this. Like, what is going on here? And there's no way that the other players would have just sat there and been like,
I think the only way to explain that is that the other players in this particular situation don't know, and Abed is more interested in the story.
Yeah, right. And of course, and of course, and this needs to be said, of course, Dan Harmon is more interested in the story than in the mechanics of the game. He's not going to stop what he needs to happen, right?
Although those Dungeons and Dragons books that you see in the episode were actually his. Those were his from growing up. So he cares about the game, but he understands that the story is more important than the game.
Yeah. No. I don't even begin to dream that there's something that I could tell Dan Harmon about D&D. Like just hey, let me tell you about some stuff you got wrong in that episode. Like, no. He knows everything that he did. It was just aggravating. It was just one of those things. Like, all right, I know we're moving the story, but yeah. So Abed is the dungeon master, and we've got Fat Neil there, who again the whole game is being played to cheer him up.
Yes.
And the conflict comes in
when Pierce appears in the doorway and forces himself into the game, forces Fat Neil out of his chair, and enters the game as a naked human Pierce Hawthorne.
Right.
And steals Fat Neil's character.
The Sword of Duquesne.
The Sword of Duquesne. That's right.
Yeah, the Sword of Duquesne. He just says, I'm going to take his sword. And Abed rolls and says, you took his sword. And I'm like, what on earth were you weighing that against? What was the roll there? Was that a dexterity roll against his arm? Like what were you working on here? But yeah, it was anyway. He comes in. I love when he shows up in the door and there's a chill before they show him in the door. There's just like a chill that runs through the room, and it was I didn't even catch it until the third time watching it for this. I was like, oh, the shiver that just went through everybody, and then there is Pierce. Yeah, and this also it brings up something that I wanted to get into. Where does this episode fall in the storyline of the season?
Throughout this season, I believe a lot of things were happening where the group was getting more tightly knit, and Pierce was kind of pushed further and further and further out. This was a season where Jeff and Britta had been sleeping together all season and didn't reveal anything till the last episode, or till the was it the last episode or was it the pen? I think it was the pen.
It's the pen where everybody finds out.
Yeah,
it's a bottle episode.
And then there's that whole pen episode where that's some of the most character-driven storytelling that they do in that show.
Yeah. Bottle episode. Which this is a bottle episode. These two episodes take place entirely in the study room. They take place over the course of what we're supposed to understand is about 2 hours or so.
Technically, if you want to scrutinize it, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas. That's season 2. That's a bottle episode because that whole thing takes place in the study room.
Season 2. Right.
Well, tell your disappointment to suck it. I'm doing a bottle episode.
So in season 2, he employs this bottle episode thing, which is where you trap your characters in a single place and you make them deal with one situation in one place. You don't have a lot of B stories. You don't have different locales and times that people are dealing with. It's all happening right there. So it's usually something really intense. And he uses bottle episodes in this season to, again, like we said, there's the story arc of each episode and then the story arc of the season. And he sort of uses the bottle episode to move the threads on the season, right? So the pin episode introduces the idea that the group does not trust each other. And we get this really intense character building, and it resolves, but it brings together this idea that there is a trust issue in the group as to who is actually contributing and what they're contributing, why they're still friends, why they're doing this. And then we have Abed's
Uncontrollable Christmas.
Uncontrollable Christmas, right. Which is an animated episode.
Which does change location and in the cartoon version of it, but
in the cartoon version, yes.
But as we learn, the whole thing's happening in the study room.
Right. Yeah. It's all happening in the study room. It's just them in kind of this therapy session with Abed there, and we get kind of a better idea of the sort of trauma that Abed has undergone, and why Abed has certain specific topics and stuff that he just can't seem to cross and that sort of thing. This is a tool in this season, and this episode is specifically moving that dial one more notch on a particular thread, and that thread is that Pierce has been feeling neglected. Yes,
and they've been neglecting him willingly. I guess they choose their battles with Pierce.
Yeah, but it's been a theme that has come up in several episodes of Pierce feeling excluded, Pierce feeling left out, And here's where this gets interesting. So this episode is sort of it's not the actual coming to the head of that. The actual coming to the head of that would be the one where they where he fakes his death. He's faking his
documentary where he fakes a heart attack and gives everybody
the bequeathments.
Yes.
Yeah, the bequeathments. But this is literally the prelude to that. This is the bill. It's like this, Valentine's Day and then that. This is moving that storyline sort of to its conclusion. This is the climax where we're getting like this maximum evil Pierce.
This is where things start to come to a head for Pierce.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a weird continuity question here, and I've always been curious about this. I didn't know if it was because it was filmed out of order or something, but a couple episodes before this, Pierce breaks his legs. It's also part of Pierce being neglected. Pierce is being kept out of a secret trampoline. He forces his way into it, gets on the trampoline, and winds up breaking his legs. And after breaking his legs, develops a pill addiction. Which comes to a head in the episode immediately after the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in the Valentine's Day episode, where basically that's where Pierce has his like actual overdose moment, and then that's what sends him to the hospital and then sets up the whole bequeathments thing. But the reason that I think that that's funny is because, yes, this episode obviously had to happen here in order to really set up the fight with Pierce. But his legs aren't broken, and he's not on drugs in this episode.
Well, he breaks his legs in like episode 3, I think. I think episode 3 is the trampoline episode, because they go through the trampoline episode where he gets the wheelchair. They go through Shirley's alcoholism at Troy's 21st birthday.
Mm-hmm.
They go through the pen episode.
Mm-hmm.
There's at least 4 or 5 episodes where he's in the wheelchair, which is a decent passage of time within the show's boundaries, anyway.
Normally that pops up in trivia, and I'm not seeing anything.
If that was
normally they're really clear about it, and also on the commentary, which I did watch, they will say if it aired out of order, and they didn't say it, or I would have written it down.
Okay, yeah, and I guess it wasn't immediately before that, because that's the one right before that is the play, so we can yeah. I just the only reason I mentioned it is because it always felt weird that we immediately after this start dealing with his drug addiction.
Which he was a drug addiction in the play.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, but it is a really important story in the season. It's important for setting up the end of the season. Pierce's decision at the end there is I think largely influenced by what happens here, and so on. But he immediately comes into the room, takes over, points out that Fat Neil is in his chair, makes him get out of his chair, sits down, has himself put in the game, takes Fat Neil's sword, takes his cloak.
I think it's important to say that Fat Neil gave him his cloak.
Yeah,
that is true.
Okay.
He did not take it from him. Fat Neil willingly gave him the cloak because Fat Neil's a nicey.
That's
and
right.
I don't want to call him Fat Neil. He's just Neil.
Or he gave him the cloak. But yeah, when they saw him lying there naked, the first thing that Neil did was walk up to him and just put the cloak on. And he decided that was stupid and took his sword and attacked him. And then he runs away. He is, a total antagonist to this. So he is separated from the group and sent to be in a different room. But back in the thing,
the quest has become to kill Pierce. They have to get a Pegasus.
Right.
That's right.
It's the only thing that can catch because the cloak
gives him double speed.
Gives them double speed, so they can't catch up to him. The only thing that could possibly catch him is a Pegasus. So while they're playing a game called the Cavern of Draconis, in which they're supposed to hunt down the giant and powerful dragon Draconis and kill him and steal his treasure, they have instead decided to leave the quest and go find a Pegasus. Yeah, that was the most realistic thing, was them not doing what the quest is telling them to do. And then, which brings us to the tavern, where they meet
Kyle.
Well,
we don't know his name's Kyle yet.
But for now, he is just a gnome waiter. And the only person who can talk to him
is Britta. She's the worst. She says bagel.
I one time was talking about that on a news program. This is true. I was on camera on a news program, and we were talking about bagels, and I went to say it, and I was like, haha, if any of you ever watched the show Community, and she says bagel, and I'm like, so anyway, these bagels, and I'm like, no, the bagels, no. The bag, like, and I couldn't not do it, and it just every time I would do it, it would go, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong? And yeah. So anyway, yeah, Britta is the worst. I always love the line. I think it's the first episode of like season 5, when Jeff is convincing them to sue the school.
Yes,
and he says to Britta, like when we first got together, I created all this because you were too smart for. I was worried you were too smart for me. How did you wind up the dumb one? And she says, "Thank you." And like, yeah, there's this change in Britta's character. In season 1, she's a perfectly competent, like
oh yeah, they
homerize her. Normal character who is just into like political activism and so on. And it's kind of a joke of like, oh, she's a little too into political activism. And by the second season, she is terrible at everything. And yeah. So
I think a lot of the change in Britta just comes because of her growth as a character. Like she's this needlessly defiant activist because she feels like that's her identity and that's who she needs to be accepted, because those are the people she hung out with.
Right.
But as she gets to know the group and gets to be their friend, and she lets herself out, and she's just a weird person.
Yeah.
Who doesn't know as much as she thinks she does.
And she is the only one who speaks gnome, and has to speak to this gnome waiter to find out where Pegasus is, and finds out instead
the gnomes are they're treated poorly, and they are
very poorly.
They're practically slaves.
Yeah. And that they consider themselves to be of a lower like race.
Yes, they're
humans.
They're what was it? They're
2 classes,
5 classes below.
Yeah, 5 classes below humans.
This part always reminded me of the Hermione, the whole little spew thing that happened in the books that didn't happen in the movies. I don't know if either of you guys read the books, but she went on this whole house elf thing where she was trying to save the house elves. And that's what Britta reminded me of.
That should have been in the movies. And honest to God, I don't know why they don't save the house elves. That is a very serious, like, hardcore exploitative system.
100%.
It's so odd. And then you give them clothing and they go away. The gnomes are very badly treated, and immediately Britta's response is, we have to do something about the treatment of these gnomes. And again, that's the most realistic D&D moment that can happen, is just your crew going, all right, we are now going to
everything else is on hold.
Right, yeah. We're going to deal with gnome classism. And
you know what? You could almost partially, like, blame the episode for this happening. Dungeons and Dragons, since this episode and since becoming more of like a pop culture staple, has kind of pulled back on the classist agenda that they had in the books, in their player handbooks.
For sure. And that's again because the Tolkien is the fact that they literally Tolkienism, just a thing. But again, the fact that they pulled from Tolkien, and Tolkien, Tolkien's work had this whole idea of like, this race does this and this race does that. And at the time, that was perfectly fine. It wasn't even just because of the racism of it. It was just like, no, it's fantasy. It's fine. It's not even related to that. But the idea of introducing race and then going, hey, we're going to assign you a task or a characteristic or whatever.
Or an alignment of good or evil.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, right. There are just some races that were like, oh, that's just an evil race. They just fight all the time. And you're like, okay, that's not a thing that we're going to say exists. But like, yeah, I think that they've gotten away from that. And I think that's largely for the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I honest to God, no, I genuinely like the the 5e system. I thought that the way that the benefits were distributed and so on was really, but it gave you more of a, you could start from anywhere. You could be playing a halfling and you could absolutely go toe to toe with a human warrior and so on when you stack it right, when you do all, what I'm saying? Like, and I was just like, yeah, that's how it should be. Like, you should be able to play as any character and become as powerful as any other character. And so in this, though, they do eventually find a Pegasus. They find a woman who sells them.
And she wants Jeff to woo her. However, Annie has to step in and do it.
Right, because Jeff's too cool.
Far too cool for this.
Yeah, Jeff just won't do the thing where he'll seduce Abed, who is playing this salesperson.
One of my favorite moments before Annie starts talking is when Abed says to Jeff, well, what line would you give? And Jeff gives like this really generic line. Mm-hmm. And Shirley goes, works for me. And the thing that I like about that scene is you can tell that Abed is really watching Jeff to find out like what lines Jeff uses on women.
Right.
Even though like later on we find out that Abed is fine with women, but like that's just, you can see Abed's mind working while he's observing Jeff be like trying to attract a woman. And it's a neat little quiet moment in the show.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about the names of the characters, by the way, Annie gets she pulls Hector the Well-Endowed, which
she pulls Hector the Well-Endowed. That is correct.
That was poor choice of words.
No, that's fine.
Annie plays the character Hector the Well-Endowed, which Abed wrote for Troy. And one of the bits I read on that was one of the reasons they wrote it that way is because Hector was the greatest hero of Troy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
I never made that connection until I had to have it in front of me and read it. And
I
love it a little bit more now.
I was going to say, I have a shirt that says literally warning. I love talking about the Iliad, and I didn't make that connection either. That is really, really clever. Yeah. So again, that's just Harmon, like burying that, that stuff in there. That's what he does. So yeah, she steps in, and we get the fantastic,
totally silent, seduction.
I place it gently over the elf maiden's eyes.
No, it's not silent. There's music.
There's music.
Yeah, there's no dialogue.
But there's plenty of dialogue happening because Troy wrote something down.
Oh, yeah.
I can see their mouths moving. I can see Annie's mouth say breast.
Oh, yeah. No, it's...
Well, you can see her hands say breasts.
It's the gesture. Yeah, the gestures are what make it. The part where she's cradling... she's just like, and you cradle, where the fingers.
Yes.
Just an incredibly graphic battle.
Has any seduction in any D&D game ever gone that way? I don't think so.
No, definitely has. I've definitely had to describe the things that I've done to things, and seen wonderful people do it. I was never as good at it, but I know some people who are just amazing at talking about what they will do
to a dragon, or
to a dragon, or to a random or to an ogre in the woods, or like whatever. And they get the Pegasus, but it does not matter because Pierce has been metagaming, and he bribed Garrett, who's my favorite side character in this entire series. I love Garrett. Bribes Garrett with a candy bar for all of his D&D stuff. Happens to have a copy of the Caverns of Draconis, and he starts learning of things that he should not know about as a player. The amulet of Draconis. Yeah. He absolutely full on metagames in a way that would have disqualified him from the thing. None of the other 100% mishaps would matter after he had read the manual. You're not supposed to read the manual ahead of the DM, ahead of the DM taking you, and that's just would have taken him out. I want to go back real quick. I want to mention Garrett. He is just this person in the school, and he is described later in another episode as he looks as if God spilled a person. He's just like mess of a thing. My favorite is the thing where it turns out that they the Save Garrett dance, and he's like, "What's wrong with Garrett?" And Annie says, "Nothing now. We fixed him." And then later we saved him. And then later she sees somebody who's like, "Oh, I'm on my way to the Save Garrett bake sale," and what? Well, but we saved Garrett. Did we? That's like Garrett is just. I can only imagine, and I should know this. I should know this offhand. Do we know the actor who plays Garrett? Eric Charles Nielsen. Oh, like Charles Nielsen Riley.
Dude, he graduated from Palm Bay High School.
No.
Yes, in 1999.
He graduated the same year as I did at the same county that I did. That's insane.
Palm Bay High School. Oh my God.
Palm Bay High School.
That is freaking wild.
That is nuts. That's nuts. That's crazy.
Can we get Garrett on the show?
I know we gotta do that. We gotta get Garrett on the show now. That's gotta happen. What is his name?
That'll be our first hashtag campaign. Get Garrett on the show.
What is his
Eric Charles Nelson?
Eric Charles Nielsen? Nelson?
I don't remember. Hold on.
Nielsen. I think she said.
Nielsen.
Eric Charles Nielsen. I just am like, that man is a solid sport about himself. Like that.
Absolutely.
Like I've never seen a more self-deprecating. Like it's you think of like Urkel and what Urkel must have done to Jaleel White, and I'm like, unless Eric Charles Nielsen like literally rips his skin off and is like a different human being underneath, like just happens to be Taye Diggs, like there's no way that he has ever shown anyone that show and gotten laid like after. Like it's just a thing, and I'm very proud of him.
Season 6, Garrett got married.
Oh no!
To Dan Harmon's wife.
Right, I know. I'm wrong. I guarantee you that guy fucks all day. Like that is absolutely true. It is just really fun to think about with Garrett. So he bribes Garrett with candy bar, and he reads ahead in the manual, and he's not allowed to do that. Talking about Pierce. But they ignore that he's not allowed to do that because it makes for a good story. So
it makes for a fantastic story.
Fantastic story.
Abed brings him back to the room because Pierce has allegedly fallen. Abed brings him back to the room because as they're flying overhead on their Pegasus, they spot a naked body in a pool of blood on the ground. And they approach.
It's got the cloak. It's got the cloak on.
It's got the cloak, and it's holding the sword. And the sword.
Yeah. And the sword of Duquesne, yep.
And they return the sword to Neil.
Mm-hmm.
They return the cloak to Neil. And as they remove the cloak, they find out that the body was not Pierce Hawthorne, but Kyle, the gnome waiter from the tavern.
That's where we learned that his name was Kyle. Right. And I also just want
Kyle.
It's a weird thing for him to have known and found Kyle and done this. I'm like, well, how would he have learned about the existence of Kyle and then done this? But we can just chalk it up to Abed telling him and it working out that way. But yeah,
absolutely.
So it was a trap, and it was a trap because Pierce
has the amulet of Draconis and is riding fierce, huge, massive red dragon, fully naked.
Right. And it is, by the way, the dragon of Draconis that they were sent to kill in the first place. That was supposed to be the thing. And epic battle ensues, wherein Pierce has all the power in the world and immediately stops time.
And we wait 14 turns.
Right, that's the first thing that we get.
Oh, no, that was when he was going to die. That was when he was going to die of exposure. Never mind.
Die of exposure. That was the best. Is in 13 turns he'll die of exposure. Jeff, what do you want to do? I wait 14 turns.
I would.
But yeah, no. So time stop, and he starts just psychologically torturing them, and particularly telling Neil
that he's going to make him fat.
Oh yeah. Oh, he changes Neil's character.
Oh,
yes, he makes Neil's character fat.
Changes his shape.
Yeah, makes him. Yeah, he casts shape change on him, and he makes him start ballooning up, and then he reveals
as fat Neil,
as fat Neil, and then he reveals to Neil.
Yeah, the reason they're there. Jeff coined the term "fat Neil." He could have just said by Black Neil, but he doesn't see the world through that lens.
Right. But he doesn't see the world through that lens. But I don't want to high road you. No. He could have just said by Neil. He could have said by Neil, right? He could have just said over there by Neil. And he says, like, but there were two Neils. Yeah. And there was one who wasn't near the bathrooms, but who was there. And that he had to specify. So he called him Fat Neil. But, he could have said,
yes,
not by Bald Neil, but by the other Neil. Or by Neil by the water fountain over there, right? Like, could have said a lot of stuff, but he said Fat Neil. And
yeah, there were a lot of routes he could have taken, but
it became his name.
Jeff.
It became Fat Neil's name. That's why he was called that at school and was only referred to as that. And that is very much the like all is lost thing, which Pierce decides to, just gloat about and drive home because again, Pierce actually is a terrible, terrible person. Like they're not ignoring him for no reason. He's something of a monster.
He ruins everything.
Right. And while he is gloating about this,
Neil takes pity, and then everybody else uses their turn to take pity on Pierce. Because they can't move.
Right.
So that's what they're going to do.
And of course, this is the only thing that upsets him. And so he
uses his turn to unfreeze time.
To let them go again.
Tries to go again.
But now he can't. Now he just used his turn. Neil, in a fantastic move,
hurls a sword at him. And he needs an 18 to hit. Every time this happens when I watch this episode, either to myself or out loud, because of Harmontown, when he rolls and he reveals as a 19, I go, no, 19.
Yeah. Oh God, the Harmontown Dungeons and Dragons is the best.
Critical hit, man. And yeah. So, scores it, pops the amulet off, Pierce is eaten by a dragon.
As they're leaving, Neil stays behind and tells Pierce that's the best game of D&D he's ever played and invites him to play at his next session.
I think the idea of, this was the best game I ever played. Like, even though it was vicious. Throughout the episode, Pierce is vicious to him. But it just, it's him saying that was the stakes. Like there were real stakes to this. This mattered in this way. And then we find out the secret of the narrator, which I was a fan of. At the end, we get a recap from the narrator.
Lady.
Actually, I would like to pop in with another fact that at the end of the episode, when Neil asks Pierce to play again, Pierce says maybe, and Dan's biggest regret, Dan Harmon's biggest regret about that episode is that he didn't have Pierce say yes.
Oh, really?
And I think that's really sweet.
Yeah.
There were a lot of sweet things throughout the series that Pierce was supposed to do that either just didn't get written to be done, or that Chevy just outright didn't want to do or didn't show up to do.
Didn't want to do them. Yeah,
it makes you wonder how much nicer the Pierce Hawthorne character would have been under a different actor.
I know.
The video game episode was supposed to end with Pierce playing the game, just throwing a ball with his dad. And Chevy didn't want to do it.
Oh, wow. Huh. Interesting.
So, and I think that would have brought some really deep character stuff to Pierce, just doing that. Because that man.
Since we're all three such big fans of the show, I have a very specific question.
Sure.
Is there a prop that you would want more than anything from the show? Because for me, it is definitely Pierce's dad's wig.
Oh yeah. Oh no.
That wig is everything.
Not even a question. I first thought immediately. Okay. If I had the mansion and the $1 million and the whatever, yes, I would love a statue of Luis Guzman in my front lawn. Like, that would be amazing. But
I would, if I had the room, I would gladly take the whole ass pillow for it.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know why that isn't like a traveling exhibit. Like why they like somebody doesn't like put that up and be like, you got.
I feel that way about season 4 of Search Party, but that's for another episode.
The thing is, this is like you're saying, Dan considers this one of the best episodes that they ever did. Every fan, I mean, like really, if you talk to fans, this is one that will just always come up because it this really
episode is one that it perfectly puts on display each character individually, grows them in the storyline that they've been developing without necessarily introducing anything from previous episodes. So if you come in at this episode, if you were to give somebody this episode and say, watch this and then, try the show out, this is just from the middle of season 2. It's a perfect episode to give somebody to introduce them to the show.
Because by this point, the comedy is fully formed. We've established the characters and so on. So they're comfortable just being themselves in it. So again, when we talk about the moving through the arc, like, Troy's arc is sort of frozen here. Annie, Shirley, they get lines, they get funny little moments, and so on and so forth. But they are more there to move the major pieces. The major pieces being Jeff and Pierce and Neil and Abed. And Abed is again still wrestling with his. Not wrestling with, but is coming into his own with bringing his friends into his imagination. Which again starts with the Christmas episode and is continuing to progress, and then Pierce, who is reaching the conclusion of his anger and or his isolation, and then Jeff, who is coming to realize that he's going to have to deal with Pierce directly, like that whatever happens with Pierce, it's going to be something that he has to have a hand in.
Yes, that he has to be the person to take him aside and say.
And he actually doesn't live up to it. Like he winds up sort of missing the cue when he should, that Pierce is on drugs and needs help, and that's how Pierce winds up in the hospital. So it's just it's the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons though brings to a head that Jeff and Pierce that Jeff does not like Pierce, but that he's gonna have to deal with him. But just that Pierce has gone too far, and that Jeff in particular knows that he's gonna have to deal with him. So that's it. I mean, that's the episode. So parting thought though on why it's so important to you.
Gosh. Okay. Feel represents me as a person. Like I feel like I could be a person on campus. I could be in that game with them. Ever since I started watching the show, I've always felt like, in another world, I'd be a student at Greendale. And the intimate nature of it being just friends playing a game speaks to me, because that's something I always put a lot of value in, is that kind of time spent with people.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's I think that's a perfect encapsulation of what happens in this episode, and why this show is just such a phenomenon to its fans. Thanks so much for coming over to our little
virtual house
studio. Yeah.
6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie.
Show's gonna last 3 weeks.
6 seasons in a movie.